Welcome to Happy Times and Places. I think you'll find it's Christmas Day. Well, it is when this one's released. As usual, I, Toby Hadoke, have to see if I can pick the best things about a Doctor Who episode chosen by a friend of mine. It's Christmas!
Hello there, my name's David Steele, and I've been a Doctor Who fan ever since the Doctor fell off the big satellite dish and turned into Tristan Farland off of All Creatures Great and Small. I'm filling my days at the moment by working on a Doctor Who podcast called The Power of Three, which is to do with my friends Kenny Smith and Tom Harris, and I'm also putting a lot of time into the Earth 2 podcast, which is a DC Comics podcast that I'm doing with my friend Peter Watson, so check those out if you can. Toby has asked me to choose a Doctor Who story for his new podcast for him to watch, where he's going to try and guess 5 things about it that I like the most. So the story I've chosen is The Next Doctor, which, as I'm sure you know, was the 2008 Doctor Who Christmas special.
Well, happy Christmas, everybody. Welcome to this festive bonus edition of Happy Times and Places, in which I will be watching a Doctor Who Christmas special, and you will be joining me if you listen to this when it is released on Christmas Day, which we've never done before, and I have a very special guest who you've just heard introduce himself, but what he doesn't know is that there's another special guest who you will be hearing from at the end of the show, which is going to mix up the competition just a little bit. So I have 2 interlopers to my monologues, presenting me with their 5 favourite things about the next Doctor, and one of them has a bit of a personal stake in it. So we will find out all the details of that after we've watched the episode, which I have lined up on BBC iPlayer. I also have it on DVD on my shelf. I've probably got it kicking around in various forms, but here we are. I'm going to watch it on iPlayer, and I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1. So, here we are in the snow, and now I don't know if it's my screen, but there's a sort of bit of picture interference, wobbly snow in the snow at the back of shot there. But I don't know if that's just because I'm watching on a large screen, because I am watching on quite a large screen, which I didn't have when this came out. Haven't seen this for a while. I do like the idea of a Doctor Who Christmas special. I think I love snow. I'm a bit of a fan of Christmas, and having it in this period setting, it looks like a sort of picture postcard Christmas. All the top hats, all the people in flat caps, a few actors of colour in the background to annoy people who get furious about things they shouldn't get furious about, and carol singers. It's got the whole shebang. It's got the whole feeling Christmas. I love this building that they're in front of, and in the build up to this, even an urchin, a cheeky street urchin, and Alexa, volume 5. And sorry, that's me just giving it a bit more volume because I don't want to miss the dialogue. Great hero shot there of the Doctor being called, and this is the great wheeze of the episode, especially as rumour was rife. Rumour was abroad about who's going to be the next Doctor. They teased us already with the Doctor nearly regenerating in Journey's End, and called Journey's End. And then we have this thing called the next Doctor. And I remember a parent at school, Liz, mother of Peter and Arthur, coming up to me saying, because people used to come up, parents and kids used to come up me in the playground when I was picking my kids up. It's the only time I've sort of felt like a parent, actually, like a legitimate parent, part of the parental conversation. That's a great shot of them both doing the thing at exactly the same time. It's saying these are the 2 Doctors. And Liz came up to me and said, I think I know who's going to be the new Doctor. And I was like, okay, none of us. I don't know, so to be honest, you're not likely to. I didn't say this is what I thought, but I didn't say it because you don't want to be that guy. And he said, yeah, I think it's David Morrissey. And you're like, oh, what? Because they've announced in loads of the papers that the Christmas special is going to be called The Next Doctor, and it's got David Morrissey in it playing some. And you've gone, oh, it's probably that. Then I've got the inside. I've got the inside tip-off. Or do you think that's all part of the publicity? And Morrissey played gamely along, didn't he? Not sort of giving anything away. Love his costume. Now, the Cyber Shades, their director Andy Goddard, we will be talking about him, who'd done loads on Torchwood. But the Cyber Shades, I think have been largely forgotten. And I remember, well, that's actually rather nifty, that him going up the wall. And that's rather fun. How funny! I was all prepared to sort of go, oh, the Cyber Shades aren't much cop, but actually I thought that was pretty neat. They'd certainly been the thing that when I'd come away with it at the time and gone, oh yeah, I better not talk about them. But I think they're moving rather niftily there up the wall. That's a decent special effect too. That holds up well still. And I think it's because they have the same silhouette and a certain aspect of the Taran Woodbeast about them. So that's an easy gag to make, isn't it? There's the Cyber Shades, distantly related to the Taran Woodbeast and almost as convincing. But actually, I think that's quite. They also have the aspect of, is it Barber Papa, who were sort of balloon-like creatures, but who all had this sort of balloon-like oval shape and were all different colours, except the black one, who was spiky and had the silhouette of Nasher the dog. They also, the Cyber Shades, have the silhouette of Nasher the dog. Cyber Nashers. And Rosita's proving herself a very game and helpful companion. Now, game was not that could have been a very good joke, because I think it's suggested later that she's a lady of the night. She's on the game, but that's not why I said that. She is game and she is capable and she is fun. And the actress, Vel, she's called. I met her at a convention and she was very down to earth, very open, very lovely, cheerful. I hope she's doing well. I haven't seen her in an awful lot, but there's loads of programs being made now by Netflix and people like that I don't see. So I hope she's well and happy, because she was good fun at the convention that we attended together. And she's quite in your face, isn't she? I quite like that. And Doctor Who's always, had to struggle a bit with, especially if the leads here are two men. What's the third character, the female, usually in this situation, going to do? And of course, then there's a danger of having the tart with the heart cliche, or the one that's so bolshy they're actually unlikable, and you go, give it a rest. But I've quite enjoyed Rosita so far. As I say, it's a while since I've seen this. But yeah, the Cyber Shades were actually a pleasant surprise there. But I think this central wheeze, particularly at this time of the show, it's not only a great idea for a story. I also like the Big Finish one called The One Doctor, where they have somebody carrying on Christopher Biggins, Banto's aim, carrying on pretending to be the Doctor for nefarious purposes. I'm surprised they haven't done a version of that for the TV series, but this is a great idea, and you're still not entirely sure. I think I did quite a lot of double think at this time. I've talked in a previous podcast about that hasn't been released yet, but about seeing a black Dalek and going, well, we haven't had a black Dalek, and then forgetting that the Daleks were probably going to turn up and be very excited at the end of Army of Ghosts. But David Morrissey is good casting, because you had to have somebody with a bit of cachet. The Doctor has to be, as John Hurt showed, the Doctor has to be, you have to have somebody with a bit of oomph to make it worth sort of giving the character away for a moment, because the Doctor is the Doctor. The Doctor is the central character. So if somebody's going to steal that mantle or assume that mantle or even disguise themselves, they need to be somebody, who's a bit headline news for whatever reason. And David Morrissey had worked with Tennant before, and of course doing the Governor in The Walking Dead. Was that around this time? Yeah, it must have been. He actually emailed me when I was doing Who's Round. A lovely guy called Jim at BAFTA, emailed all the BAFTA members who've been in Doc 2 and said, would you be interested in doing this guy's thing? And David Morrissey actually emailed me and said, I'd love to, but when? I'm so busy. And we did actually do a bit of a back and forth, and he always replied, which even people I know don't reply to emails, to either say, and eventually just said, I just can't, I'm not going to have the time. I'd suggested there was a time when he was coming to Liverpool, and I said, I couldn't make it over. So I think he's a decent fella, David Morrissey seems to be. Despite being, really busy and having done stuff in the States. I mean, he had a major role in The Walking Dead. Love all this snow stuff. Andy Goddard's direction, by the way, is excellent. I love that silhouette of that Cyberman. I'd forgotten there's a Cyberman with a black face and a brain. I had totally forgotten the Brainiac Cyberman bang. A sort of cyber leader they've gone for, which is, that is quite old school series. I'm still divided in my thought about the modern Cybermen. I think I prefer the modern Daleks and the old Cybermen. I really like the design of the Cybermen, and I like their masks here, but I find their gait, the way they hold their arms, and I think the sort of curve outs on their arms and legs, I don't know. It sort of works for me as a concept, but those sleeves are a bit too big. They look like they've got magician sleeves. I think I prefer my Cybermen sleeker, even if they're slightly, sort of baggier like they are in the old series. I think I prefer, tight fitting, but metallic, so a hybrid, which is appropriate for Cybermen. And that's not to say I don't like these Cybermen, but if I was, but they don't 100% do it for me. I love this sequence coming up. If it's so we've got a black funereal thing going on, and of course these guys are going to get taken over by the Cybermen and do their dirty work, and they're going to remain, I think, dressed in their funeral garb, which is great for sort of a great visual for cyber sidekickery, and it means the people doing the aliens' dirty work's played by humans who are, easier to sort of direct and have and do all that sort of stuff, but they still have a good look about them. So we're let to know early on, aren't we, that there's something wrong here, because his sonic screwdriver is just a screwdriver. So there's this early on, they sort of go, look, he's not the next Doctor, because is it a screwdriver or a chisel? And he bangs it to make the noise. Yeah. So we already sort of going, oh, well, he's not the Doctor. And that's kind of, this is the era of sort of headlines. I mean, the Doctor's daughter, for example. I mean, there's no reason for her to say, hello, Dad. Does everybody say that when they come out of the clothing machine? It's an immediate kind of headline grabber to say, oh, what's this? But this one, I think, has a bit more weight to it than that sort of mid-season misdirection. This is a beautiful idea, and of course the reasoning behind it, I think, is terribly moving and extremely well done, if I recall correctly. There's he's got this wonderful bravado about him, David Morrissey, but he's a clever enough actor that it's just not quite convincing enough. He is David Morrissey could make a brilliant Doctor, but he's a good enough actor to suggest that these clothes don't quite fit him. I'm not talking about his literal clothes. I'm talking about the clothes of the Doctor. He's speaking the way that he thinks perhaps a Doctor should. It's slightly, the dialogue is slightly arch, and that's clever from Russell as well. Not to send it up or make it too stupid, but there's just a little bit in it that makes it slightly, on occasion, like a fan-written version of the. Whenever you see a sort of, but from many years ago, I haven't seen. I know the fan stuff at the moment is of extreme quality because there's loads of creative people out there. But I remember sort of reading fan stuff when I was younger, and it was the Doctor would always sort of say things like indubitably, my dear fellow, and speak like a sort of wondering thesaurus. And this is a great misdirect with the fob watch. So it's still going, we've shown you the silly screwdriver, but we're still tempting you with this idea. And Tennant, I could talk about Tennant all the time. But I actually like him more now than I did then, and I liked him then. I think it's taken me a while to assimilate the sort of cheeky cockney, chubby thing. Because I think, I was programmed for Edwardian gentleman thing, and having had the sort of war scarred northerner of Eccleston, and then together I still haven't quite had the cheeky eccentric Edwardian thing, which Matt Smith did rather well, and he had also the young man in the old man's body. But and as I say, I loved Tennant at the time, but as I say, there was part of me that was like, oh, he's a bit sort of and not quite. I'm slightly eccentric, but actually his eccentricity is very different, and the energy and the pace and the attack that he gives to it. He knows exactly where he is in the episode. He knows exactly how to pitch the drama. He drives the drama. I think he's funny. I think Tennant is brilliant. I think he is a superb actor, and actually he is very doctorish. And as now we've had more doctors, you go, no, actually, and this is clever, of course. The info stamp that becomes, the driver behind this doctor's secret. I love his waistcoat. I love his coat, and it is what you'd sort of choose to play the Doctor, isn't it? And he does. He's got a wonderful suggestion of sort of hurt behind the eyes that he doesn't quite understand. And again, this is brilliant because it's throwing us out questions. But all of the questions, this is the brilliant thing about Russell T Davies' script, all of the questions and the mysteries have an emotional answer, have an answer that has an impact on the characters, which means that you don't just go, well, okay, because anything can happen in science fiction. Of course, anything can happen in science fiction. Now, it helps if it's logical within the science fiction, which this is, because he set up what the info stamps do, and you can kind of buy all of that. But then when you get the thing, you get the revelation, you don't just go, oh, right. You go, oh, God. Yes, it's that, but also the fact that it's that is really sad. And I think that's brilliant. I'm loving the lighting in this and the lights coming through and the colour palette of it all. Andy Goddard, I was looking forward to directing this because he'd done some great work on Torchwood. He directed Countryside, which is a strange episode, but it's very, very well directed, and it has an opening sequence with that song, What's That Coming Over Hill? Is it a monster? Is it a monster? You'll know the name of the song because you're into modern pop. I sang it, you know what I mean? But yeah, and I remember that being a brilliant sequence in that episode, a riff on the old, story that used to tell each other at night to spook each other at school or brothers and sisters or whatever, at camp or whatever. That one about the woman hearing something being banged on the top of her car, and the police eventually come and tell her not to look back, and she looks back and it's her husband's head who's gone off for help, and that's being banged on the top of the car, and it was a kind of play on that. Really terrifying, brilliantly directed. And I'd been tipped off that he was good because Andrew, who's in charge of the theatre hall at Bath, where I tour Mothsake my Doctor Who scarf, said, "Oh, I know this guy who's directing some Torchwoods. I'm sure that's..." So I sort of knew Andy's name before I'd seen any of his work, and so it was inevitable, of course, that I would end up getting to know him, because when I moved back to Manchester and started dating Shez, I met this friend of hers who's a makeup designer, and they were talking, and Shez said, "Oh, Toby's really into Doctor Who," and Andrew said, "Oh, my husband directed a Doctor Who," and of course it was Andy. So yeah, full disclosure, I am slightly biased towards director Andy Goddard, but I think he's a terrific director. But also, full disclosure, he did cast me in a film year before last, that came out this year, but I thought he was a good director before that. In fact, I think casting me may have blotted his copybook. So he directed a movie called 6 Minutes to Midnight that I have a little bit in, but nice to do. And so with the Doctor's listening to his heart, but we don't, I think, I've got to fit, he doesn't give that away now, does he? We don't hear him say. So the Doctor knows. The Doctor is ahead of us. Alexa, volume 6. I hope this sequence is all I remember it to be. I absolutely adore the colours. I love that aerial shot. I love snow. I love snow anyway. Snow in Doctor Who, I love the Claws of Axos. Oh, look at that. Dervla Kirwan all in red. That's a brilliant shot of her emerging red through the mist. The added bonus that the vicar is played by the son of Professor Quatermass. That is Jason Morell, son of Andre Morell. and you can tell, can't you? He's got his dad's face. I've spent a little bit of time with Jason interviewing him about his dad for my Quatermass book. We talked a bit of Doctor Who. He was at college with Russell T Davies, I think, and he told me the story that when he turned up, everyone was really pleased to see him, and a bit of a fuss was made because he was Russell's mate or whatever, and David Tennant sort of went, "Who the hell are you? How come you're getting this treatment?" Only very jokingly and friendly, but there was a bit of a kind of, and it's because he's an old mate of Russell's. And Vincent Brim, that's Edmund Kent, who's sadly one of the new series actors that's passed away. He died about this time last year. And Michael Burtonshaw is the other excellent actor, speaking top hat. And my friend Vincent Brimble, I think, auditioned for one of those two guys. Vincent, who played Tarpock in Warriors of the Deep, and has just been Grumpy Grandad in Village of the Angels, which actually is probably a better part than these. So he auditioned in whenever this was, 10 years ago, and is remembered by the casting director, and eventually comes back. I don't know if he's been seen for other parts since, but eventually makes it back into the show. I'm thrilled because Tarpock's not the best part in Classic Who, so I'm thrilled that Vincent has made it back in Village of the Angels after a near miss here with the next Doctor. This is glorious. Cybermen in the Snow, I love. Cybermen in the Graveyard, I love. Dervla Kirwan, I'm going to talk about loads because I think she's absolutely fabulous. And this is really glorious and horrible. And on BBC television, love The Mist, and on Christmas Day, and I think the Cybermen look superb in the snow, and I think Andy's directing them really nicely. And the angles here are great. She's got a brilliant sort of inscrutability about her, and a sort of quiet amusement at her superiority, but a sort of sad, gimlet-eyed thing going on as well. And it's interesting what they do with it, because I seem to recall she has a lot of lines about men being useless, and it's and in lesser hands it would just be, oh, she's one-note a feminist from the olden days with ideas, and that's her character. But it's actually all about the fact that she is the most intelligent person around, but will never flourish at this time because of the inherent misogyny within the society. So it's a completely plausible motivation. It's not that she's got ideas above her station. It's that she's not allowed to inhabit her station because of the time, and I think that's very subtly done. And that's the last with this. We don't actually see the vicar die, do we? It's just nice. I assume, was that just him that we heard? Merry Christmas. I love her quiet amusement at it. She's really, really good. She's a terrific actress, and she's called Mercy, isn't she? But those eyes are a fire. All that she's almost got a sort of permanent smile that's a mask for the emotion underneath. There's a sadness and a coldness there. It's a really clever performance. But it's a brilliant central idea, isn't this? And they're still leaving you with enough doubt. So of course here we have the big reveal of the TARDIS. They've raised the spectre of the TARDIS. We haven't seen the TARDIS yet. So yeah, it's a good one for a Christmas special. I remember when I watched this, funnily enough, I'd mentioned Harold Pinter in one of my Doctor Who related social media messages or tweets or something, and then this was the day that Harold Pinter died, or the death of Harold Pinter was announced. Harold Pinter, of course, famously wasn't in The Abominable Snowmen, but many publications and even the BBC CD of the soundtrack of The Abominable Snowmen said it was Harold Pinter, even though the minutest amount of research would have told you otherwise. So Tachyon TV and the wonderful Neil Perryman, they actually produced a T-shirt before Redbubble, produced a T-shirt that said Harold Pinter was not in The Abominable Snowmen, Toby Hadoke, as a T-shirt. And I meant to buy one and I never did. You can't get them now. And so Neil and I joshed about Harold Pinter, and of course I think it was him that dropped me the thing and said, whatever he said, made an allusion to basically Harold Pinter has died, and his death certainly came out the Christmas day that this was on. I was was at my ex-wife's mother's house watching this. I remember that this warm glow of this fire in this scene sort of reminds me of Christmas, because I'm a country boy, so warm glows of fires is a very, very Christmassy thing. And you've got the holly there, and I think, and I'm a sucker for a Christmas special that really is this sort of picture postcard period Christmas special kind of wheeze. And I applaud them for keeping the Christmas specials, interesting and different every time. And I think Doctor Who in a period setting is one that appeals to me a lot, because I think it's the sort of thing the BBC does better than anybody else. Period drama. Doctor Who, it helps with the incongruity, because what I love about Doctor Who is, the clash of ancient and modern, the clash of spectacular and mundane and humdrum, the clash of the intergalactic with the everyday, the clash of the idea of space and time travel with a hot air balloon. I mean, it's a lovely gag. It's a terrible acronym, but I suppose that's the joke. I suppose that's the joke, but they didn't even try to go, should we try and make this a plausible acronym for how a balloon works? No, we'll just do it as a very, very bad, torturous thing. Another lovely little clue. He's got money, and the Doctor Tennant acts all of this stuff so brilliant. His mind is racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and he's just soaking everything in whilst maintaining, civility, and also, with half his brain probably scanning for danger. It's such a brilliant performance. I wonder why I had such misgivings about the sort of Cockney chatterer element of it, which, as I say, it I don't know what I expected, because he is he's a younger man than the Doctors that I was used to with the classic series, and certainly a younger energy. Let's take Davison out of the equation, but Davison was old man in a young man's body a lot of the time, and I'm not sure Tennant is the same. He certainly does channel the war scarred and the ancient, but he's also got that youthful, that sort of vim, that bite, that attack. He's always on the go, and I think modern television really needs that, and I think Doctor Who really needs that to keep the pace, to keep the energy, and to make sure. And this is what this Doctor Who of this time does so well, is that the stakes get upped every sort of 5 to 10 minutes. There's no cliffhangers because there are no stories in that way, but actually the dial goes up, or something happens that makes it change gears, which means that there are very few longeurs in these sorts of stories, and that she has a weariness about her too. Yeah, she's good. Oh, and the cyber shade is driving the horse and cart. I love that. Yeah. So, and the Cybermen at Christmas is nice. I do like the Cybermen. They were always my favourite monster in the olden days. But that's partially because I can never go for everybody's favourite monster, because I like to style myself as a maverick. But I love the Daleks too. But I think yeah, I'd put the Daleks, the Cybermen at night look very good. But what's the story with this Doctor, of course? Jackson Lake. Yeah, he's set up as a kind of... You think he's going to be one of those figures like President Zarb or whoever, who's talked about, looms large in a story that they don't actually appear in. Is this the revelation? Oh, yes, because it's a story about dangerous memories and about not facing things. I read a brilliant tweet today where somebody said, dear sir, apologies for being late to reply to your tweet. I didn't open it for ages because of imagined disaster or something. And I'm like that. If I see I sometimes won't open an email even though there's nothing about it that suggests a portent of doom, but there's something about if I open it, I'll unleash whatever it is that I just don't want to look at the moment. And I certainly am somebody who is haunted by memories. I cannot escape moments, just sometimes a trivial moment from the past that comes up, and sometimes an important moment at the past, something I've said, something I've done. But these memories are the Doctor, and this is the first time, isn't it? We see all the old Doctors and confirm, and including Paul McGann. Yeah. So yeah, we've had the journey of impossible things, but that's clips of all the Doctors. Oh, that was a big deal. I remember the mention of Gallifrey in The Runaway Bride being a huge one, but I love the way that we had no right to expect the new series of Doctor Who to pay service to us as fans of the original at all. And the fact that they went to such great lengths, but very slowly and very sensibly and not self-indulgently, to slowly bring the old series into the fold, which I suspect the BBC weren't that interested in. Do you know what I mean? And I think that there have been occasions, haven't they, when there's been a complete, disassociation. The Doctor Who musical concert. You can have 8 minutes from the classic series, and everything else is from the new series. Really. And I think sometimes some of the the merchandise ranges were like, you don't have stuff from the old series, it's only stuff post 2005, and even I think certain documentaries and things, but actually on the whole, the showrunners, the creators, have wanted, and very cleverly, and I suspect against the wishes of the executive branch of the BBC and the merchandisers and all of those people, just folded old Who into new Who to an extent that I would have been happy for them not to, even though I know that I would have preferred it. But it just means that then when Gallifrey is said in The Runaway Bride, and when all the Doctors appear here, you go, oh yes, thank you, because that's for me. Do you know what I mean? That's for me. That's not for the other. That's not for the most of the 10 million people watching on Christmas Day. That's for me and about 5,000 other people. Tennant does so well with his eyes, doesn't he? And this is a great moment for Morrissey, and of course, he's so good, and it's so heartbreaking. Always with Russell T Davies, there's an emotional thing, a loss. And the reason he is the Doctor is because he cannot face the heartache and an awful memory that's there, that can never go away. And I am haunted by memories, not of the death of my wife, but of sadnesses that have happened. But as I say, sometimes just moments of embarrassment, things I wish I hadn't said, annoying encounters, sometimes the way I said something, but also a couple of bits of heartache that sometimes when I'm putting up a shelf or walking the dog just suddenly raise their ugly head and cause pain. And I think this is a really good way of addressing that within the science fiction of Doctor Who, and using it to facilitate the brilliant headline grabbing idea of another Doctor. But of course he's not another Doctor. The Doctor, he hides behind the Doctor in order to take the pain away. And I think Doctor Who fans know something about that. Rosita gets a lot more to do than I'd imagined. Oh, and she's lovely. She's a great character, feisty sidekick, but decent, and so, and of course, children at Christmas. This is very. This is again kind of evoking sort of. And not shying away from sort of, Dickensian squalor and all of that sort of thing that we also associate with, because not all of our Christmas tales are happy ones, or they might end happy, but they base themselves in the idea of, poverty and those who don't have everything they want at Christmas, particularly if it's a Christmas decked out like this, dirty-faced, hungry urchins never too far away. And so, it's not forgetting the message of Christmas, which is kind of important. So yeah, I say picture postcard, but it's a postcard that comes with a government health warning about the fact that not too long ago, and if we're not careful, the gap between the rich and the poor means the things that we take for granted and our gorging that we do, and the largesse that is on show is not the truth of Christmas for everybody. And I think there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. But also, it's very helpful for the depiction of this kind of Christmas period, this kind of Christmas story. And of course it gives great stakes for the Doctor, and as we'll also discover, for Jackson Lake, because hidden amongst these kids is the next twist in the Jackson Lake reveal, because we haven't had it all. So we think, okay, we've got to grips now with this. We know who he is and why he's the Doctor, but the story has another twist up its sleeve, which which again gives us a bit of an emotional lift and actually an emotional high, but still one that produces tears. And it gives us, and this is what actually that the Russell era is so good as, it gives us another hero moment, and lots of people in Russell T Davies' Doctor Who get a hero moment, a moment of revelation, a moment where they do a thing they wouldn't have done had they not encountered the Doctor, but who's enabled them to see their potential. The hero moments are great drama, sometimes maybe even slightly cheesy drama, but they're great drama. I'm a sucker for them. They always give me a lump in the throat or a bit of a cry, but they're also great in terms of what they display about Doctor Who, is that Doctor Who enables us to search for the hero inside of ourselves, or to do those fundamentals that the Doctor does, that when we see people not doing that, we feel people come up short. I love the Cybermen at night here, and flanking Miss Hartigan, and this is a nice touch, because he tries to outwit the Cyberman, and the Cyberman is ahead of him, because there's a danger that the Cybermen can look stupid sometimes when they get outwitted. But I've got a feeling this actually turns out to be another bluff, does it? Or there's more to the Doctor's plan with the info stamp anyway. Is that right? But I like the fact that the info stamps are a useful plot driver, but also, with a little bit of tweaking, they can blow a Cyberman's head off, and you've got that whole belt of them that the Doctor got out earlier, which is a nice visual because it looks like a belt of bullets that you'd have in a Western. So it suggests packing heat, even though they're not the bullets of a machine gun. It gives the same visual, which is very witty and very sort of wise deployment of visuals to tell the story. I think Dervla Kerwin's wonderful, deliciously evil, but without going over the top, but has a plausible motivation. And who's killed the Cyberman? A hero moment. Look at him with his machine gun bullets. He's not the Doctor, but he is the Doctor, Oh, and yes, now Rosita gets her moment of punching. Oh, yes, because she'd made some sort of insulting suggestion about her, hadn't she? About her, she'd done a sort of bitchy sort of comment about Rosita's livelihood. The Cybermen will rise tonight. That's a great Doctor Who line, but she didn't go for the obvious either, but she did it well. She gave it the right Wellian heft. But again, Rosita gets a nice little moment. Everybody gets their bit. It's like in feature films where those are the best American action movies. They have all these sort of funny supporting characters who might only have, 3 dozen lines, but they pop up throughout the movie. I'm thinking sort of Die Hard and things like that, where everybody gets their payoff or their moment or their funny little gag or the topper to their gag or the fulfillment of their punchline or their moment of bravery, and it's why Hollywood movies work so well, because amidst all of the action they're populated with these sort of characters that you can afford to alight upon and give their moment, and I think that happens a lot in Russell T Davies's Doctor Who. How do we feel about this half black, half silver Cyberman head with the brain thing showing? They never did that again. Did they? Maybe they did. But I had totally forgotten him, and I quite like him. And she kills them off. Now, I never like it when baddies kill other baddies, but of course these weren't really baddies. They were servants, and of course she's sticking it to the men, so that's a very satisfying moment for her, the Scarlet Woman that she is. And this is a brilliant set, actually, as well. Kudos to the stage design, and this is wonderfully sort of what's it called, that sort of cyberpunky, isn't it? It's slightly cyberpunky and but evoking as it does, the heart, the work of the workhouses and and it it's quite brave, I think, showing children being treated quite so badly. I'm sure it's something they had to think about sort of tonally, but because we're slightly distanced from it, and they all look like urchins from the chorus of Oliver or Every Sperm is Sacred, because they're a sort of TV type in a way. I don't think you'd be able to show sort of modern child wage slaves in a similar situation. So that's a very smart deployment of your social comment and your tactics about how to tell certain stories. They did. Andy did tell me a couple of the actors that they'd looked at for the other Doctor, which sadly I can't repeat because they were told in confidence. But very interesting, and I'm sure that they will come out in the future when a bit of time has passed. But I bet they had great fun deciding, who it should be. But I can't actually think of a better choice. It seems so timely, so of the time that Morrissey would be the guy, and it was plausible that he would play the Doctor. And again, the turning of the enemies upon each other is sometimes a trope that I dislike, but this sort of works in a way, because as we shall see, when she goes in, there's a twist. But also, of course, the Cybermen kind of think they're doing her a favour, but yeah, I would have served you anyway. Is a great thing to say. So why are you doing this? Because but as I say, she turns the table, which is a lovely twist, because you go, this is a bit. Oh yeah, I could have seen this coming, I suppose. How do we get rid of the female baddie? We can't have the Doctor kill her, so of course the Cybermen are going to turn on her. But and it allows for this brilliant moment. Doesn't she open her eyes and they're jet black, which is fabulous. And so you probably think that that's the end of it, and that she's now just going to be the Cyber King. But no. But I love this visual of the black eyes. Again, just a very simple effect. Well, I don't know how simple it is to do, but turning a human being's eyes black, and it becomes a complete distortion of a face, just with that simple, chilling addition. I think Andy's directed the Cybermen brilliantly in these workhouse scenes. Like sort of overseers, and that's a great. There's obviously a bit of. It's not called paint boxes, a bit of CGI or stuff going on up there, but it's there's flames going on and steam and cogs and that red lighting on their faces is brilliant. It's visually fantastic, this. Yeah, all hail Cyber King, all hail Andy, the director. I love all this. It's very steamy, isn't it, this episode? And the brilliance is that we've established that she's the most intelligent person in the room. Again, it is a bit sad for the Cybermen that they have their tables turned on them, but I suppose they are relatively simple creatures, aren't they? That's all. They're simple creatures without nuance. But the fact that she has such a mind means that she can actually become this sort of terrifying hybrid and even more potent than the Cybermen. And Dervla Cohen again does it really well. Yeah, and yeah, I nice shot of the cyber hands as well. And that's a good look as well. Again, it's a very sort of simple, it's just half a cyber hat kind of thing, a brass cyber hat. But it's a great visual, and she's doing proper Doctor Who baddie acting, with a little extra something, I think. And yeah, so suddenly you go, okay, well, we thought the Cybermen were the threat. We kind of got the measure of them. Oh, but now she's wiped out the cool black brain Cyberman guy. Where do we go from here? And I certainly wasn't expecting what happens next. Where again, you sort of thought the Christmas special was winding down a little bit, and okay, he's got to defeat the Cybermen and this woman. Okay, now he's got to defeat this woman who's now in charge of the Cybermen. But that's okay. That's the twist. That's the escalation of the threat. And Rusty Davis at his typewriter there going, ho, 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 ho. Oh, shall I do a giant cyber thing? Stomping over Victorian England. Yeah, not Victorian. Is it Victorian? Oh, Edwardian England. Oh, I don't know. Whichever Old England. Chocolate box England. But a chocolate box with poverty and scurvy inside. Lovely that Rosita is still playing. She's had a really good active role throughout this. I'd kind of forgotten that. She's not just sort of mouthy madam. She gets some really good heroic moments and holds her own. And yeah, good for her. Yeah, and I love that shot of the cyber shades through the Cybermen's legs and in the steam. She's absolutely fantastic looking as well, isn't she, Val? She looks absolutely stunning in the whole palette of it all. I think it's a really, really magnificent picture, the whole thing. But poor old, and it's just about to hit him, isn't it? Which is I think is really I'm getting a bit emotional because I do find the idea of being lost and of being broken, and I've been both in my time. I'm sure we all have, when you felt absolutely abject, and when you have scars that will never quite heal. Got a couple of those too. This sudden realization that I've got a kid, but actually the kid was taken away from me, and that's why I've forgotten the kid to protect myself. And now when I have that brilliant moment, I've got a child. Of course, Russell won't let him sort of find his child happily behind a bush and go, my son. It's like, I found my child. He's on a ledge hanging over some really hot furnace type thing in a room that's about to explode. That, people, is the genius of this period of Doctor Who. Every single revelation, every single plot escalation has an emotional ramification and has an escalation of the stakes. This always has a forward momentum. The adventure just keeps going and keeps building. And every time you think you've had the set piece, the Cybermen in the snow or whatever, the dragging with the cyber shades, whatever, the fight with the Cybermen with the sword, all of that. There's another one round the corner. We haven't even got to the balloon yet. I mean, this feels like the climax, and we haven't even had the main bit yet. Every time I've sort of half of me thought the story is winding down to the end bit, I'm reminded, because I've seen this before, that, oh no, there's another big moment to happen yet. And as a viewer on Christmas Day when this went out, I had, this seems to be this is okay. This is the lovely, he'll always be a bit broken, probably, will he? But he's got a reason to live again. That's the thing, that what the scars of his dead wife. The Doctor Who's not, not everybody lives most of the time, and it actually tells us that the secret is to live through the terror and experience the death and destruction and get on with it. Look at that, how audacious. I did remember, I think, texting my brother, who said, why is it in the history books that there's a big Cyberman stomping all over old London town? And I'm sure I texted him and said, I thought that was great fun, although I was a bit taken aback by the cyber nonsense machine. So I remember the first time going, really? How are they going to explain this away? And then going, oh, they just don't. But I absolutely love this now. I think that shot of Rosita in the giant cyber head coming out, and then the reveal of that's what they're inside. So she's and it's like a sort of cyberpunk transformer stomping over a shortbread box illustration. It's brilliant. So it's Doctor Who at Christmas, and why isn't this in the history books? For whatever reason you want it to not be. They didn't write much down. All the records were destroyed. People forgot. People thought they were mad. It entered folklore. The Doctor erased everybody's memories. I love that look that the Doctor gives him. The Doctor's essentially going, I might not make it back from this. And again, every time that happens, every time Tennant does that kind of dramatic, it's a far, far better thing, I've got to do this thing, because he always gives you the impression that he's hastily improvising, running into danger, and never quite sure of the exit. I kind of believe him every time he gives you that look that sort of says, I'm not coming back from this. And even though I know how television works, even though, I was hearing stuff, because I know a few people who are hovering around the production by this point. So I like to think I might hear some stuff. I actually soon tired of that and so started avoiding things. And so started to remain spoiler free, because it's actually a much more fun way to be than to be one of the people with one of the 6 Mona Lisas, as it were. And I'm not saying I had any sort of massive anyone on the inner circle, but stuff gets out, and some of it found its way to me. And indeed some of it found its way to a lot of fans. I'm not saying it's because I have an equity card or I'm one of the gang, because I'm certainly not. But the idea, I never put it past the show to pull off a shock like David Tennant leaving and not telling us or whatever. Because they'd done so many exciting WTF moments in the past, I sort of thought there's nothing these people won't try and do. And this is great. This is beautifully Doctor Who. A giant cyber metal Mickey versus Doctor Who in a hot air balloon, chucking stuff off frantically. That name is the Doctor. Oh, do you see that? I'm a sucker for that. I get tears in my eyes at that, and I know exactly what it's doing to me, and I know exactly what it is, but I love it. I'm an unapologetic lover of those kinds of moments. And I love and I look because the way that the arm goes all the way round, and the joints and the movements of this cyber beast, I think are fabulous, and it's brilliant. It's a giant Victorian Cyberman, or is it Edwardian? I don't know. I'm not a historian. So she's still got the feminist shtick going on, which, as I say, is not a kind of cheap. Oh, let's just make her. She's not like a psychotic Isabel Watkins. She's, the doctor keenly emphasises, your mind is special, but don't turn it to evil. And also doing that thing of going, well, the doctor has to blow up this cyber beast with this woman in it, so he has to give her a chance to surrender, because that's the doctor, not averse to killing, as we sometimes think, and as I sort of like to think. He sometimes has to destroy. So the program has to sort of pay lip service, and he wears it so heavily. Look, Tennant, and he sort of gives a hint that he could be a destroyer, as well, and he doesn't want to be. And he's aware of the danger of his own pragmatism, what it could turn him into. And I think that's really clever. The doctor has to deal in death, and without being a hypocrite. But of course, brilliant, because that's got all the visual, like the machine gun thing before. That has the visual of him destroying her with a laser beam. But he hasn't done that. Again, you think you've got the measure of this, but instead what he's done is, and I think that's horribly moving, and in the same way that Jackson Lake has been hiding his mind with a false sort of costume, a false personality as costume. She too, because of the way that her society has made her cover up her intellect as well as anything else, has meant that she's always had this front, which is why her performance was so clever, because it had that sort of inscrutability about it, that little ghost of a smile, hiding blazing eyes, it was so clever. And because her mind, but also she'd been hiding from herself, and of course in so doing lost herself to evil. And when he freed her mind, not shot her with a laser beam as it looked like, again, it's an ending that, or an escalation of the plot, or a development of the doctor's actions that has an emotional impact on the person it is happening to, which makes the drama far more than bangs and crashes. And he manages to contrive it so that when the giant cyber nonsense machine falls to its death, it doesn't fall on London and doesn't squash it to pieces. So there we go, another hero shot, but a sad one. That's, the doctor did not enjoy that victory because it came at a cost. It came at a cost of somebody he would rather have saved. Do they have the snow joke in it? Because in previous Christmas specials, the snow has not actually been snow. Isn't that right? But this is snow. Oh, but is the snow because it's something to do with what the Cybermen have done? I can't remember, but I always liked the snow jokes where you thought it was snow and it was never snow. But I've been talking through this, and we get a lovely little, because there's a danger of once Jackson Lake's story is told of him sort of not being relevant, but actually he becomes important, and now he has a little favour to do to perhaps help the Doctor reconnect with a little bit of himself, and I think that has a beautiful symmetry. The Doctor doesn't always have to be the tutor. And some of these shots are lovely as well. The special effects of the giving the idea of a big old London. Tennant's so good. And so is David Morrissey. The two Davids. So yeah, I've got to think of my 5 favourite things, haven't I? Well, there's definitely got to be the Cybermen in the snow. Oh. Is there a snow joke here? No, they won't. So the Doctor just goes funny. That's interesting. So they don't shy away from it. They don't shy away from the fact that people would have talked about this stuff, but it gives the Doctor a little line to sort of go, yeah, but it isn't though. And I like the Doctor as sort of lonely and damaged. I do think it's an important aspect of the character that there's a price to be paid for all of the Doctor's heroism and all of the excitement, and that perhaps a lot of the Doctor's energy and humour and all of that is a mask for his terrifying memories of hurt and loss that he doesn't want to look at. So, which is why the Jackson Lake story is a great sort of mirroring of the Doctor's story. Oh, and he gets to go in the TARDIS, and I think that's lovely as well. He gets a little moment at the end to touch the magic, and I think it's such a brilliant central line. The central wheeze of the next Doctor. It's such a brilliant idea to tell an emotional story, and to sort of recalibrate the Doctor. At this juncture in the show's history. Yeah, very, very good. Onwards and upwards. Oh, Doctor. Oh yes, and of course, yeah. The loss of living a long time, because they leave. Yeah, and that and that's true to the history of the show. Tom Baker was very good at sort of showing those occasional moments of pain that he would front up, lest he open the door to that. They break my heart, and they do, and every companion's leaving. Well, no, I mean Martha's was a little bit of a victory for her, but it was a victory born of pain, wasn't it? But yeah, I mean it's one of the great aspects of the modern show is that it does have an emotional undercurrent that really does tug, and I don't resist it, and I don't think it's easy to do well. And I think that's a lovely... And, I expected the Doctor to go as well. I expected the Doctor to be the sad, lonely traveller who wouldn't stay for Christmas. And I love the fact that he did. I have to rescue the closing credits from the BBC iPlayer, which doesn't think that you should keep watching a programme when writing comes up on the screen, because we don't want... viewers who like to read on a public service broadcaster, but that's probably an old tune I've played many a time. This is sadly when the closing credits start to get a little bit ugly and go at far too fast, because I think again an edict had come from the BBC saying they could only last a certain amount of seconds, and so I think those titles are a bit ugly, just the size and speed that they go, but they have to be that size because you wouldn't be able to read them if they were smaller. So yeah, and that's a shame because it slightly cheapens everything, but that's not a fault of the team. They're doing their best with silly executive edicts from a broadcaster that doesn't trust its audience to stay for beautiful closing music and closing titles that organically sort of part of the drama and part of the watching experience. I don't know when that stopped being a thing. I don't think we benefit from it. But then again, I've never stood up and started to leave as soon as a film has finished at the cinema, and I know a lot of people do that. So perhaps I'm in the minority. But you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with a public service broadcaster aspiring to hope to perhaps create an environment where people will realise they quite like sticking around and doing that, rather than go certainly on iPlayer, which you're not worried about people turning over to another channel because they've actually come to you as a destination and they can come and go as they please. So don't force them into the next thing immediately. It makes me feel like you've invited me round for tea, and as soon as you've given me my main course, throw some trifle on my macaroni cheese. Anyway, it's very much a fury of mine. So listen, I've got to choose 5 things before David does. But what David doesn't know is that Andy Goddard, the director of The Next Doctor, I emailed Andy and asked him what his 5 favourite things about The Next Doctor were. So Andy is going to be a special guest on this podcast, even if only in written form. I've printed out the email, which I have not read. Obviously read the beginning of it when he said, yes, of course I'll give my 5 things. And then I printed it off, and I do not know what Andy has chosen. So I've got to see if I can beat David by choosing more than 2 of his 5 favourite things. If I get more than 2, I've beaten David. But then, if I don't, I think we've got or even if I do, you've got a separate competition to see which of our 5 favourite things we also share with Andy, the director. So isn't that exciting? I do love Christmas. Happy Christmas. You're listening to this on Christmas Day. I'm doing it not too far before Christmas Day because I'm running very behind. But nonetheless, it's not quite full-on Festiveville here in Hadoke Towers. We have an undecorated tree. But I am wearing a Santa hat for this largely audio experience. But I am filming it for YouTube, where it will find its way eventually. So listen. My 5 favourite things. The whole number 1 has got to be the wheeze, the setup of The Next Doctor, and all that entails. The casting of David Morrissey. I'm probably going to say quite a few, but I think actually what the story did for the public at that time, when they thought, are they going to actually? Because David Tennant had announced he was leaving, and we nearly had that. We had that false regeneration at the end of. The Stolen Earth and that whole, and it's like, I wouldn't put it past them. But then what the story actually facilitates, which is a story that is a terribly emotional story of a man hiding from trauma, but that also, has various parallels with our main hero as well. It works on so many different levels. And it's a great idea because, we get to play around with the idea of another Doctor. We get to cast another Doctor, even though it's not one that will have repercussions on the whole of the rest of the series. Wonderful. So the whole wheeze, the whole concept of The Next Doctor and the way that it was packaged in the media and everything, genius. Number 2, it's got to be the scene in the graveyard with the snow and Miss Hartigan in her red dress and all the other guys in black and the snow and the graves and the Cybermen in the snow in the mist. I think that's a brilliant sequence, really well conceived, wonderfully shot. I think I have to say, and I wasn't sure going into this, I was gonna say this, but Dervla Kirwan, I think I remember loving her at the time, but I thought, I'll go into this and she'll be a good villain. But actually, everything about that character, and what she represents, and the clever way it made the point about her within her society never being able to fulfill her potential because it's so sort of looking at that chocolate box past and saying, but actually. There's real unfulfilled potential of people in those days. Doctor Who, and especially Russell's Doctor Who, is a lot about actually fulfilling your potential in spite of what life throws at you and in spite of our humdrum surroundings or whatever, and never sort of dismissing things out of hand and never not being curious. And so Miss Hartigan does all of that, and yet she's the baddie. So that's really interesting as well. But that's because in her society, she doesn't get to do what somebody of her mind should be allowed to do. And on the surface, it might look like she's just, as I say, a sort of psychotic Isabel Watkins who keeps, gassing on about men. But it's much more sophisticated that, and really helped in that with I think a splendid performance from the fantastic Dervla Kirwan. I think the setting. I think the fact that it's, the Doctor of Christmas Past. I think all that you can have with the that set design of where the urchins are, but all that chocolate box Christmas that it evokes without shying away from the dirty underbelly, but also because it's Doctor Who in the past, and the Cybermen pumping and steaming away within that setting looks sort of appropriate at times, incongruous at others, striking at others. I think it's absolutely magnificent. And really helps, and the snow and the Christmas and all of that. Love that. And I think I have to say, number 5, it's got to be David Morrissey. Just so right at the time, but it's a performance that really stands, but it's a very layered performance. The emotional stuff you sort of take for granted, which you shouldn't, because that's hard, and it takes an actor of real quality to pitch that so well, and that sense of fragility of his confidence and of his self-identity and all of that stuff. But he's also funny, but he also has the heroic moments, but that deeply broken man that he is, and that as I say, that sort of slightly false playing of the Doctor, you get that it's a kind of slightly ersatz Doctor, a sort of assumption of the role of the Doctor rather than him being the Doctor, which again you could send that up, you could have fun with it, you could have too much fun with it for it not to be real and for it to be a bit one jokey, and actually I think it was really, really clever. So those are my 5 things. So let us see what David, who is a lovely guy by the way, and do follow him on Twitter, and avail yourself of his podcast, because the other guys who do it with him too, very interesting fellows, nice fellows too. So David's 5 things.
And the 5 things that I've chosen that I like are, number 1, the basic story concept. I think it's genius, and it's so straightforward and simple. The Doctor and the audience meet a new Doctor who they've not seen before. It's could have been done at any point in the series history, and it would have worked. It's just, I love it.
1 to me. This is exciting. Yes, and I've said all I need to say. 1 to me. We're both in accord.
Number 2 is the guest appearance and performance from the series' main guest star, which is David Morrissey. Now, obviously, he'd worked with David Tennant in Blackpool, and I'm a big fan of his since then, and stuff like State of Play and One Summer. He's a brilliant actor, and he's the absolute emotional core of this story. He plays a Doctor who's like a cross between the panache of the Third Doctor and the verbosity of the Sixth Doctor, and he's brilliant. He plays such a range all the way through it, and he's terrific. I love him. He's so good.
It's currently a 2-0 to me, so I only need to get 1 more, and I have won for only the 2nd time in Happy Times and Places history. So let's just mark that in case it all goes downhill from here. And he's right, and I love the fact that David mentioned One Summer there. That was a formative experience. I remember watching that at my grandparents'. It's a wonderful piece of television. David Morrissey stars. James Hazeldine is in it as well, I think. And is it Spencer Lee? David Morrissey and Spencer Lee, I think, is the name of the other actor, as 2 young Scousers. And it's odd because it's just a sort of one-off film thing, but it really stuck with me and seems to have stuck with a lot of other people who watched it. So if you have never seen One Summer, watch One Summer. It's nothing like Doctor Who. It's a good piece of television, and if it's just David Morris's presence in a Doctor Who Christmas special that brings you to it, then so be it. That's great.
Number 3, it's the little flashback when we see all of the Doctor's different faces when they're looking at the info stamp. I love the idea of Colin Baker and Peter Davison sat at home with their family watching the Doctor Who Christmas special, and then their faces pop up. I think it'd have been lovely, I think it's such a nice little touch for the fans, and it's cool.
When I saw that, I was going to choose that, and then I forgot because I remember that was a big deal back in the day when I watched it for the first time. That was a punch the air moment. And I suppose we take for granted now that old Doctors popping in clip form and everything, but that was a big moment, and I wish I'd chosen it instead of I don't know. Damn. Anyway, that's the one that got away for me.
Number 4, on the subject of cool, is DT himself. I love the tie and shirt and suit combo. Looks really, really smart. Yeah, that's number 4.
Oh, okay. Well, suddenly it's gone from, in the 90th minute, it's gone from 2-0 to me to 2-2. So is there anything in injury time to help me? I want David to either choose Dervla Kirwan as Miss Hartigan, to choose the Cybermen in the snow in the graveyard scene, or to choose the setting of oldie worldy Victorian / Edwardian. God, I feel so thick now. Dickensian London. He's going to choose something else, isn't he? I was so nearly there.
And number 5 is the final scene when the Doctor and Jackson go and have a look at the TARDIS, and Jackson gets kind of freaked out, and the Doctor decides to stay for Christmas dinner after all. I think it's lovely and charming, and they both play it so well. So, Toby, those are my 5 things. I hope you managed to guess them.
Oh, I nearly did. Thanks, David. I'll read you his Twitter handle during the closing credits, I'm sure. But do avail yourself of his podcast and all that he does. He's a nice guy. He's a really nice guy. It was very, very encouraging to me during the Who's Round years, always plugging it and posting about it. And, I think I've met David once, but I feel like he was one of the first people I asked to do this because I like the cut of his jib, and as I say, top guy. But I'm cursing if I'd chosen the Doctors. I didn't nearly choose the other two, but I nearly chose the blooming Doctors. It's just taking your eye off the ball. Right. Andy Goddard. I'm very happy to contribute to the podcast, which sounds like fun. In no certain order, my 5 fave things about the next Doctor would be. Now, this is where I get, so we've got another competition between David and I now. Whoever has the most of Andy's things gets an extra Satsuma for Christmas. Cybermen in the Snow is number 1. Yes, 1-0 to me. That was the 4-word tease producer Julie Gardner gave me when I was offered the gig. In hindsight, I should have doubled down on my homework and included a visual nod to the 10th planet. But I had fun with the graveyard sequence in the snow with the Cybermen killing all those Victorian gents. I've always felt it was the strongest sequence in the episode, and ironically, the Doctor doesn't feature in it. When editing the scene, I had a temp music score overlaid with Hans Zimmer propelling the action, which was always my favourite version. And, true fact, Joe Strummer of The Clash used to be a gravedigger in the Newport Cemetery where we shot this. Ah, that's a new fact. Love it. So Cybermen in the Snow, I think I get that. As he cited the graveyard scene, I think I get that. 2. The 10 Doctors slideshow. Oh, will I never be free of this oversight? Seeing Hartnell, Troughton, Pertwee et al. When the Doctor lights up the info stamp was such a nice festive gift for the fans. If you can't have a whiff of nostalgia at Christmas Day, then when can you? Why did I not say this? I would be bathing in chocolate pennies now. Yes, it is. And as I say, at the time, it just goes to show how spoilt we are since, because that was such a moment. 3, Miss Hartigan's dress. I can't really have that as well, because I've given myself the graveyard sequence for Cybermen in the Snow. I can't have that twice, I don't think. Kudos to Louise Page and her costume team for Dervla Kirwan's wardrobe. The combo of the white snow and that striking scarlet dress was such a wonderful palette to work with. She had a parasol to match, and I gave her a show-stopping entrance when the dress first appears. Again, that graveyard sequence. As a footnote, I think Dervla is terrific in the ep. That's a footnote, but it's not the whole thing, is it? So I don't think I can get that. 4, David Morris's performance. Now then, David and I both get a point for that, so I'm 2-1 to David. It's a dual role, really, playing both his version of the Doctor and the traumatised Jackson Lake. His performance seesaws from a kind of have-a-go brio in the earlier scenes to the later PTSD when the narrative peels back his true identity. Beautifully put, Andy, there. Andy's also a writer, you can tell, I think, here. The moment where he remembers his dead wife is beautifully done, and you really feel this is a man adrift and lost, a great actor and a terrific bloke. When we rehearsed the rather sweet closing sequence where the Doctor shows Jackson the TARDIS, David asked if it could transport him back to the 1935 Merseyside derby when Liverpool beat Everton 6-0. And number 5, Air Balloon versus Cyber King. Neither of us chose that, so actually on the Andy Goddard bonus 5 things, I am victorious over David. So David and I, because I've sort of changed the rules right at the end, emerge even Stevens with this one. So I don't get a victory, but I at least get something a little extra, like finding a nougat or a coconut amongst the assorted boring toffees and coffee creams left in the Quality Street jar, finding an overlooked coconut. Air Balloon versus Cyber King. I think the pros and cons of the final showdown and how it was executed and rendered act are perhaps another conversation. But just for the sheer chutzpah of putting it down on the page, I have to applaud Russell. As a concept, as a visual, it's not something you see every day on telly. I admire that go hard or go home ambition to think big and ballsy. And after all, it was Christmas Day. And he adds, 2008 seems so long ago now, but I have quite happy memories of shooting in Gloucester and Monmouth. The script was called, oh, this is interesting, The Other Doctor Across Production, which was a more honest title, I guess. Somewhere in post and pre-marketing, it became The Next Doctor, which I felt was a bit of a false promise. The audience expected pizza and got chop suey. I didn't know Russell was returning. That is a good thing. Oh, because I think I told him in the email I was looking forward to Russell coming back. So there we go. That's so lovely. Andy is, of course, off making feature films now, including 6 Minutes to Midnight, which is on one of the Flixes. Is it on? Is it on Netflix? It's not on Netflix, I don't think. It's on Disney Plus or Amazon. It's on one of them. And I'm in it for a bit, in a gorgeous costume designed by the costume designer of Doctor Who. My costume was provided by the person who came up with Christopher Eccleston's costume. Isn't that marvellous? But mine is a bit more showy than Christopher. In fact, it's because it's set during the war, 6 Minutes to Midnight. The colour palette is deliberately quite muted. And then I come on. It's really not a massive part, but it's nice to be in a feature film, especially one directed by the director of The Next Doctor. And he's a very lovely fellow too, and I'm grateful to him for providing his thoughts for this festive special of Happy Times and Places. Grateful for the impetus to do this episode, which came from David Steele, who's a thoroughly fantastic fellow, and I hope he and Andy, and indeed all of you, are having a great day today. And so I have to say, and incidentally, a happy Christmas, a Merry Christmas to all of you at home. Thanks for listening. And if you're listening to this after Christmas Day, fine. Goodbye.
I think you'll find. I think you'll find. I think you'll find.
I think you'll find.
Yeah, all right. It was 1851, which is the Victorian age, nowhere near the Edwardian age. But Dickensian was okay. Dickens was around. So I was good when I said Victorian. I was good when I said Dickens. I was woeful when I said Edwardian. But there we go. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And, I do know things about extras and small part actors that nobody else does. So I'm going to forgive myself, even if you don't. Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. Special thanks to director Andy Goddard for his contribution, and my guest this time around was David Steele, who can be found on Twitter at DavidSteele, DAVADSTEEL. And do check out his Doctor Who podcast that he does with Tom Harris and Kenny Smith, a wonderful triumvirate. It's called The Power of Three. It's available on iTunes and everywhere else. And there's also his Earth 2 podcast, which is about the pre-crisis DC multiverse. And so if that's your bag, check that out too. Thanks so much to Dave Gates for providing the music for this podcast, to Dylan Patterson for the artwork, and to every single one of you who has supported me on Patreon over the past 12 months or so. It really is appreciated. And thanks to everyone for listening. Happy Christmas. I'm not going to plug Patreon or anything, especially as I even pronounced it wrong in the closing titles there, because it's Christmas. I just want to say this is just beginning my 2nd year of podcasting. I started in November of last year, so I'm a year and a month in, and it's been an absolute pleasure to get everybody's feedback and support. I've really appreciated it. It's heartening to discover that there's an audience out there for my particular brand of stammering arcana. And as I say, everybody has engaged with this so brilliantly that it's been a pleasure to do. If you're not tired of my voice already, over Christmas time, you can listen to me on the 7th Dimension on BBC Radio 4 Extra on Christmas Day and Boxing Day, 6 p.m. till 7, midnight till 1. And on New Year's Day and January the 2nd, I'll be doing the same, but I also have my own show, Absent Friends, at 6:50 and midnight 50, where I'll be saying goodbye to some of the sci-fi alumni who've departed from this realm in the past 12 months or so. Bit of a labour of love, and I'm so thrilled the BBC have let me do it, and that is on BBC Radio 4 Extra at 6:50, as I say, and midnight 50, and will be on iPlayer. Absent Friends, presented by me. So that's my particularly maudlin way of seeing in 2022. But thanks for all your support over 2021, and I hope we can continue to be friends well into the next year and beyond. And look, if you are listening to this on Christmas Day, hello, happy Christmas. It's great. I love a bit of Christmas. And you're, for whatever reason, not having the best time of it, or feeling a bit lost or lonely, or you've had a power cut, or you've opened all your presents or eaten too many sweets, and you want to reach out, I'm on Twitter. Say hello. Ask me a stupid question. I'm around. Don't let Christmas pass in a way that you don't want it to, if I can possibly help or connect or anything like that. Twitter, at Toby Hadoke. I'll be there. Okay. Very, very happy Christmas to you all. I like to think I have a good memory for Doctor Who stuff. I think I've shown that I have. But every time I go to do that joke, I go, and incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home, part of my brain goes, are you sure it's not Merry Christmas? Sure it's not Merry Christmas? So every time I want to do that little reference, I then go, oh, but it could be wrong. It's a bit like Victorian and Edwardian. It's extraordinary how you're... I'm making excuses now. Just die by the sword you've killed yourself with, Toby. But it's, yeah, as I say, I just literally had to look up if it's a merry or a happy Christmas to all of you at home, even though it's one of Doctor Who's most infamous moments. It's happy, by the way. It's a happy Christmas. Incidentally, it's a happy Christmas to all of you at home.